Hi, my name is Dr. Scott Young, and today we're going to talk about after the red pill. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the money issues and the economic ways that are happening. Coming right up. So I know that sounds crazy. You're like, what is he going to talk about? So I have been working on a book right now as we speak, and it's the 16th of November. And I'm working on a book called Revelations of the Red Pill, NESARA and Money. And that's the working title. So I like the Revelations of the Red Pill. I just haven't figured out the rest of it. And I suck at titles, so forgive me. You're not going to like the title yet. Anyway, I always have my audience throw out titles. And by the way, if you want to throw a title out on the comments, I'm happy to hear it, okay, when you kind of listen to this. So I've been thinking a lot farther after, what kind of things happen. So I just kind of want to draw a few areas out for you here. Okay, so we're living in what I like to call a plastic economy. Okay, versus a cash, and there's a friend of mine who used to call it a grace economy. And I'll explain that here in just a second. But let's talk about firstly what a plastic economy actually is. So in a plastic economy, what you're going to notice is that debt is king. What I mean by debt is king. So you use debt to get yourself farther. Now, one of the things that happens all the time, sorry about my cough, it's nothing new. I got esophageal issues going on. Okay. But when you have debt as king, what I'm going to use it from just another standpoint. I'm not talking about a person who's getting farther and farther in debt and they can't afford it anymore and they just keep using the debt. What I'm talking about is that times businesses, for instance, will use debt. So you'll use with debt and buy out another business, and then you might flip it, or you might, really expand it. So I personally have done that before, bought out a business, bought it for $20,000 and created something out of it. But I put a whole bunch of sweat equity inside of that. So when you're doing it correctly, you're going to have sweat equity. Sweat equity. Boy, that sucks. I'm going to have to throw that one away. So sweat equity, and you're going to build it up. Okay? So that's what you're doing, but you buy it with debt. And this is a very, very common thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just part of this economy. Why is it that way? It's because we're living with a fiat system, money system. And if you've listened to some of my other videos, which I really recommend you do, in the fiat currency, it goes from you and comes back to you through points of the IRS, that you put out your money. Then you have it go to the Treasury Department only as just a quick pass through. You'll have it go over to the Federal Reserve, okay, where the Federal Reserve, and by the way, each one is taking a chunk of that money out. Now, firstly, these guys like to take out 6% of the total, and then they're paying people like the Queen and all the other cabal. So this is where this is coming from, okay? And then they're also taking out the interest of the debt. Now, when we talk about governmental debt, we're talking about this level of debt, but they're paying back the interest on that debt, okay? And we have to pay it. Because what happens is it goes over to the U.S. Mint, and they tell them how much, whether it's digital or non-digital money that they're going to make. So they make the money, right? And then it moves back into the system, and this is all based upon, the confidence, sorry to say that better, the confidence in the economy. Okay? Now, when you say confidence in the economy, it's like, how much confidence do I have? And I used this before, by the way, I love this. I was using this before. I mean, it could be confidence in ketchup packs. And I said this before to some people, they're like, I went out and bought my first ketchup packs. I'm like dying loving that statement, okay? It's kind of cute. My point is that we can have confidence in an eraser, and that's what we want to trade in, okay? Because we choose and see this as a value point, okay? If you watch any post-apocalyptic movies, one of the things that happens is that the money in the system becomes devalued. What do you want to do with money? Maybe they're trading in medicines back and forth, or bandages, or guns, or bullets, or whatever they're trying to do. They create a new level of value point. But what's interesting, what they're doing there, is the value is very specific upon a point of currency. Because that is what, if I trade with you bullets and I give you, a box of bullets of 25 bullets, and you give me, a month's worth of meal, let's say, that is a transfer of wealth, okay? That's an economic transfer point. And that value is based upon, a weights and measures, and there becomes this constant measuring for the person who needs this versus who needs this, and they trade back and forth, okay? That's actually where money comes from. Now, when this current system that started when the Fed accomplished itself in 1913, okay, and a long story with this, what happens is it's all built around debt. Okay? It works because of the debt. And so therefore, when they say confidence in the economy, that's just craziness. It's confidence in the debt, because the debt people make money when we're in debt. Hey, if we didn't have any Federal Reserve debt, these people would be freaking out over there. And the more debt that they have, the better that they feel about it. Now, here's the point that you're seeing in the world. You're seeing these excuse me. You're seeing these elitists get to a tipping point of their debt. And when they move into $29 trillion, which is probably where we are about now, you might disagree with me. And then, you hear Congress and Senate and all, they're putting this $1.9 trillion, but you don't realize that's more like $3 or $4 trillion, and just crazy amounts of money. That's more than any amount of money that Congress has ever allowed for anything. And that's been happening over and over and over again. And this is actually part of the plan of NESARA, is to defund these people. So the more debt that they bring on, the more that they have it. And it's just going to throw them off the cliff. But we're not throwing them off the cliff and bankrupting the system. We're going to bankrupt them. And we're moving into a new process we'll talk about over here, okay? And I know people go, this can't happen, it's not happening. And I'm like, yes, it is. It absolutely is. Be calm, and I'll explain that too, okay? So this is what happens when you utilize your debt is king, or plastic economy. It's fake. It's built in the fakeness of this thing. And when you see it in this kind of way, now people who are smart and they use debt to build themselves up, so they run out, a business might run out and spend $100,000 and or $100 million, whatever that is, excuse me, and they move in and they're building that debt, then they can turn around and sell it they buy it for $100 million and sell it for $120 million. They use debt to finance this thing, okay? And that's because it's built in the system. Now, what happens to businesses all the time, you always hear about the one that made money by doing that. But what happens when you have a person who builds in debt and they lose? Let me give you an example of something that was actually in my own past. There was a company called Telex, T-E-L-E-X. And I remember leaving in 1997 from them. But when I was in the middle of this company, they had really good hearing aids. They were known as an excellent hearing aid manufacturer. But they decided they didn't have any of the newer technology, the newer digital hearing aids at the time frame. So they went in and bought in this Philips Digital, okay? And there were key elements or key problems about this. And they spent way more money than they were even worth as a manufacturer, okay? We're talking about a $2 or $3 million manufacturer at the time. Might be off on the exact number. They spent about $1.5 million, almost half of what their revenues were that they spent for the Philips Digital. And there were so many problems with it, and it sunk the company because they made a wrong choice in the investment, okay? So they created debt, and they were wrong about it, and they actually died as a result of that, okay? That's what happens with debt. It is a big game that occurs. Actually, gambling goes off of the same thing, right? You walk in there with $1,000, you win, $5,000. So you've added $5,000 to your kitty. You got $6,000. They hope that you keep playing. That's why they bring you more drinks and bring you a sandwich. They don't care about that stuff. They want you to keep playing, and by the end of the night, you walk away and you only have $500. And you go, but I won $5,000. No, you didn't. You just lost $500. Right? Do you catch my point? So that's what they're hoping for, and that's how they built the system. Now, when we break the system inside of NESARA, we're going to move into what I like to call a grace economy. I'm going to throw my iWatch over here because it went off on me last time. Okay, so in a grace cash economy, it starts with Debt Jubilee. Now I have, oops, can't write here today. I have a lot of people really getting after me on this particular topic. They're like, well, that's not fair. And I'll talk a little bit more about the fairness of this thing, okay? So you have to delete the old debt. What's the old debt? Everything that's in the Fed. What's in the Fed? Every single major financial transaction occurs inside of the Fed. How do I know that? It's because when you get money from a bank, you're going to have it through the debt system because the banks all tie up into the Fed. So in essence, this is on the balance sheet. All of those things that are on the balance sheet of a local bank for the housing situation, they have to write a statement out to the Fed and explain it. I mean, it's kind of like the NFL. The NFL, St. Louis, the LA Rams want to trade with the Denver Broncos that just happened here recently. And they want to trade, they traded, for instance, a second-round pick and a third-round pick for Von Miller. So, they do this trade, but they actually have to put it through the NFL before the trade deadline to let them be approved. Because if they find that, there was some funny business in the middle of it, they'll cancel the trade, okay? And that's actually exactly what happens with the Fed. Because they're in the middle of this financial transaction, whether you're talking about a B2B, which is a business to business, or you're talking about a B2P, or B, business to personal, when you get a house loan. Or I, for instance, have gotten loans through a bank who's going to give me money, right? So that it can be either kind of way in that way. But that all goes right through the Fed. And they have records of all that stuff, okay? And yet, that's the part that will all get deleted because you have to flush the system out of that. Now, you might say, that's really great for some people and it's not good for other people. We'll talk about that in a minute. So that's part of it. But we're also going to see just a complete changeover into a QFS system. So a quantum financial system, it's going to have a completely different kind of computer system. What happens over here is that you have in this side, the Fed actually has something called the SWIFT. Okay? And the SWIFT thing is the transfer mechanism between the whole system. Okay? And where do you find the SWIFT? Well, you're going to look at if you look at your account number, go look at your checking account. Go look online if you don't use a checking account. And you'll see two different things. One is a code for your account on your right-hand side of your check. On your left-hand side of your check is the routing number. Now, this isn't a statement about where the bank is. See, if you get the right routing number, it's the location of that bank that has a code, and that is saved where? At the Fed, okay? This is every single transaction that you ever go through goes through the Fed. Now, what happens if my parents loan me $100? Well, they don't know about that. So that's off of that debt situation. But in the QFS situation system over here, in the QFS mode, what we're finding is that we're going to have a new system of transferring money. Okay? So so the banks will have new codes. Okay? So this is the cool and amazing part. They're going to have the new coding system because it's going to go in something that these guys can't even get a hold of. I mean, you're talking about, it's like they're transferring in ketchup packets, to use my example. We're trading ketchup packets and these people over at the Fed going, what are you doing? We use dollar bills. And they're going, we don't want to use that anymore. Because what we're going to do is it's going to have on the balance sheet gold, a precious metal, okay? You know, in some countries where we have, which is called GESARA instead of NESARA, they might have diamonds as their richness, or they might have some other type of precious backed asset, okay? Don't want to get into that. I mean, some other, maybe big in silver. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that, okay? And yet, these are what's going to have the balance sheet over here. But this balance sheet of all this fakeness over here of the SWIFT system in the debt system, it just goes away. So it starts with this thing called the grace economy. And I started hearing about this grace economy from my friend Will back in 2013. And he would talk to me, he goes, I want you to change your way of thinking about profit and loss systems and balance sheets and take off all the debt stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't know how to do that. I don't get it. And he would try to do this and he would just mess me up. And I had to get flushed out of all the stuff that I had learned over here. Now, I'm not a financial planner. I don't play one on TV, but I'm telling you, I knew enough about this stuff. And that's why he wanted me a part of it. But I didn't know how to accomplish this. That's why he called it grace economy. What we're really talking about is cash is king. Now, this is a very old concept. I mean, if you talk to the greatest generation people, see, most of you, if you're X, Y, or Z generation, you've never heard cash is king. But baby boomers, traditional generation, and the greatest generation, greatest generation is about 92 years old and older kind of thing. They actually thought about this. They would talk this way because what they did is they used cash or whatever they had in their banks to pay for things. So they wouldn't buy anything until they had the ability to afford it. And they hate the idea of debt. And I get it. And yet, if you use debt correctly and can pay it off, it can be a vehicle in this kind of system. But what's coming is that it's not going to be anything like this in this new system, okay? So instead of having a plastic, fake, debt-based system, we're going to see a grace-based economy, at first with grace through the Jubilee, the Debt Jubilee. This is a biblical conversation because it's going to delete all the debts. Secondly, that you're going to see in here, they're going to have new codings. They're going to have an asset-backed system that is called cash is king. And it's going to change the mindset. Okay? So this is the first part of the video. I don't want to do too many videos. I don't want to have too much stuff. I could go like for 45 minutes, and I'm going to do a little bit more here in just a minute. But I want to do this first level of this, the plastic economy versus the grace economy. So hope that helps you get a little perspective. You need to research this. I know you're going to say, I don't get this, but promise you I had done this on other videos. So look at my other videos, look at the playlists, okay? Like, comment, tell your friends about this, okay? It was really a big thing that's coming. So I'm excited for you right now. Thank you so much.